She grew his son for 9 months, pushed him into the world, and was still healing when he looked at her across the dinner table and said, "You are turning into a bag of beans," all while she was still bleeding for him. He didn't yell. She didn't leave. He just got quiet. And quiet, it turns out, was the most dangerous thing she ever became. Hey, before we start the story, we need you to hit subscribe right now because this is exactly the kind of story we make for people like you. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. We read every single one and we love hearing from you. Zaire Amari had a laugh that could fill a stadium. Her college roommate used to say it. Her father used to brag about it to anyone who would listen at his Friday night jazz gigs on Peachtree Street in Atlanta. Her mother, Joyce, used to say God gave Zaire that laugh on purpose, because some people are just meant to make a room feel warmer. That laugh had been missing for a while now. And the worst part was, Zaire couldn't even tell you the exact moment it disappeared. It didn't happen all at once. It happened the way a candle burns down, slowly, quietly, until one day you look and the light is just gone. She was 31 years old. 12 weeks postpartum. Living in a 42nd floor Manhattan penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Central Park that most people only saw in movies. She had a husband who ran one of the most powerful Korean business empires in the world, a beautiful son named Eli who smelled like baby powder and everything good, and a body that had just spent 9 months growing a human being and 14 hours pushing him into the world. She was exhausted in a way that didn't have a word for it yet. And Kang Ji-won, her husband, the man she had said yes to on a Nashville rooftop 4 years ago, had decided that this was the right time to have opinions about her body. The first time she almost thought she misheard him. It was a Sunday morning. Early. Eli had been up twice in the night and Zaire had handled both times alone because Jaewon had a 7 a.m. call with Seoul. She was standing in their kitchen in an oversized sweatshirt and leggings, her hair wrapped, making herself a cup of tea with one hand while bouncing Eli on her hip with the other. Jaewon came through the kitchen in his suit jacket, grabbing his coffee, barely looking up from his phone. "You should probably put on real clothes before the housekeeper comes," he said. Casual. Like he was reminding her about the weather. "You've been wearing that sweatshirt for 3 days. It's not a great look." Zaire turned to look at him. He was already walking toward his office. She stood there holding Eli and her tea and she thought, did he just? Was that? He let it go. She told herself he was stressed. The North American expansion was accelerating. He had 17 things on his mind. He didn't mean it the way it sounded. He let it go. The second time was harder to let go. 6 weeks postpartum. They had been invited to a small dinner with 2 of Jaewon's business associates and their wives at a restaurant in Midtown. Zaire had spent an hour getting ready, longer than she used to because nothing fit the way it used to and she was still figuring out this new body, still making peace with it, still learning its new language. She came out of the bedroom in a wrap dress, black classic, the kind that was supposed to be forgiving, and stood in the living room doorway. Jaewon looked up from his phone. He looked at her. Then he looked back at his phone. "Didn't you wear that before the pregnancy?" he said. "Yeah," she said slowly. "It still fits." "It fits differently," he said, still looking at his phone. "You can see everything. Maybe try something else." Zaire stood very still. "We leave in 20 minutes, she said quietly. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm telling you now." She went back into the bedroom. She stood in front of the mirror for a long moment. Then she changed into a looser dress, put on her shoes and came back out. Jaewon nodded approvingly without looking up. She didn't say a single word the entire ride to the restaurant. The third time was the one that truly broke something. 12 weeks postpartum. Private dinner at home, just the 2 of them, Eli asleep in the nursery. Their chef had made jerk salmon and roasted vegetables, Zaire's favorite. The kind of dinner that was supposed to feel like a moment to reconnect. She was wearing a soft blue wrap dress. She had washed her hair. She had tried. Jaewon sat across from her, cutting his food, his phone face down for once on the table beside his plate. He thought, maybe tonight is different. Maybe tonight we actually talk. Then he looked up, looked at her, and said without any warmth, without any build-up, without any awareness of what his words were about to do. "You've gained a lot of weight. Have you thought about working with a trainer? It's been 3 months. Other women bounce back faster. Other women bounce back faster." Zaire put her fork down. She looked at her plate, then at the window, then at her hands. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She did not throw the salmon, which honestly looking back, was an enormous act of self-control. Okay, she said. And she picked her fork back up and kept eating. But something inside her chest cracked down the middle. Pling. Permanent. The way old China does. No explosion, no drama. Just a break that cannot be unbroken. She didn't tell anyone. Not her mother. Not her best friend Kezia, who called every Sunday from Houston and would have absolutely had something very loud to say about it. Not Dr. Anyone, because she wasn't in therapy yet. He just carried it. And Jaewon kept going. It wasn't every day. That was the confusing part. Some days he was fine. Distracted, busy, barely present, but fine. Some days he brought her coffee without being asked. Some days he held Eli and looked at him with that cracked open expression that reminded Zaire of the man she married. But then there were the other days. The day he came home to find her on the couch, Eli finally napping, her eyes half closed, the apartment a little messy, and he said, sighing like she was a disappointment, "You really should try to keep things together. The place looks like you gave up." She hadn't given up. She had been awake for 19 hours. The day they ran into his colleague and his wife at a coffee shop in Tribeca, and the wife, perfectly dressed, 6 months postpartum herself, looked immaculate. And Jaewon on the walk home said, "She looks incredible. You can't tell she even had a baby." Pause. "Then, you should ask her what she does." Zaire stopped walking. "What did you just say to me?" she said. He looked at her like she was overreacting. "I'm just saying she looks good. It's a compliment to her." "I'm not. You're comparing me to another woman," Zaire said. Her voice was low, steady. "While I am still healing. While I am still feeding our son. While I am doing everything alone because you're never home." She looked at him. "That's what you're doing." Jaewon's jaw tightened. "I'm just trying to help you," he said. "No," she said quietly. "You're not." She walked ahead of him the rest of the way home. He didn't apologize. She didn't bring it up again. But that night, after Eli was asleep, she sat in the rocking chair in the nursery, the one she had picked out herself from an antique market in Brooklyn, and she looked at the little mobile above the crib. Painted moons. Painted stars. She had hung it herself. She put one hand on her stomach. That soft, still healing, entirely miraculous stomach that had grown her son. And she felt something settle in her chest. Not sadness. Not anger. Something quieter than both of those. A decision maybe. Still forming. Still finding its shape. But there. Thought. The beginning of something she couldn't name yet. What she also didn't know, couldn't have known yet, was that Jaewon's coldness wasn't just stress or emotional unavailability or the pressure of running an empire. There was a name attached to it. Seo Yuna. Kring. Polished. A fashion executive who moved through the Kong family's social world like she had always belonged there. She and Jaewon had known each other for years, long before Zaire, and somewhere in the gap that had grown between husband and wife, something had quietly started up again. Zaire found out the way you find out things you weren't looking for. A Sunday afternoon. Jaewon in the shower. Zaire sitting on the couch feeding Eli. His phone on the coffee table lit up 3 times in a row. The contact name saved as Y. She didn't touch the phone. He didn't need to. She just sat there with her son in her arms and felt the last warm corner of something go cold. The really devastating part, the part she would talk about in therapy for months, wasn't even Yuna herself. It was the call she got 2 weeks later. She had been connected through a mutual contact to a branding consultant named Priya, and they were on a video call discussing a project concept Zaire had just started sketching out. Somehow, through the small world chaos of New York's elite social circles, Priya mentioned Seo Yuna casually. They had worked together briefly on a campaign. "She's gorgeous, obviously," Priya said. "But kinda mean, honestly. She said something at a dinner last month about..." She stopped. Looked uncomfortable. "Actually, never mind. Tell me," Zaire said. Her voice was very calm. Priya hesitated. She was at some event and apparently made a comment about Jaewon's wife. Said something like, "I don't understand how she let herself go like that after the baby. No wonder he's bored." Silence. "She said that," Zaire said. "I'm sorry," Priya said. "I shouldn't have." "No," Zaire said. "Thank you for telling me." She ended the call. She sat completely still for 60 seconds. Then she opened her notes app and started typing. She typed for 2 hours straight. By the time she stopped, she had the bones of something called Bloom. And something in Zaire Amari had stopped being sad. It had started being decided. Hey, if you're already feeling Zaire's story in your chest, we need you to hit subscribe right now because this is exactly the kind of story we make for people like you. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. We read every single one and we love hearing from you. The therapist's office was on the Upper West Side, 3rd floor of a brownstone on West 86th Street, with a window that looked out onto a row of trees that were just starting to turn orange when Zaire first walked in. She had found Dr. Nadia Osei through a recommendation in an online forum for postpartum mothers. The same forum where she had been reading late at night, Eli finally asleep, scrolling through other women's words and feeling for the first time in months, slightly less alone. Dr. Osei was a black woman in her late 40s from Houston, Texas, with natural locks and reading glasses on a beaded chain. Her office had plants everywhere. Big leafy ones. Trailing ones. A small succulent on the windowsill. Felt like someone actually lived there. Zaire sat down on the couch across from her and said, "I don't really know where to start." "Start wherever feels most stuck," Dr. Osei said. Zaire looked at the succulent. "My husband called me fat 12 weeks after I had our baby," she said. "Multiple times, actually. Different ways. And every time I said okay. Or I changed my dress. Or I walked ahead of him and didn't say anything." She paused. "And I keep trying to figure out if that makes me strong or stupid." Dr. Osei didn't flinch. She just nodded. "What do you think it makes you?" she asked. "Tired," Zaire said. "Mostly just tired." That was session 1. He came back every Tuesday after that. Therapy was not comfortable. Zaire had not gone in expecting comfortable. But she had maybe expected it to be a little more organized. A little more. Here is the problem, here is the solution, here is your homework. Instead, Dr. Osei kept asking her questions that had no clean answers. When did you stop telling him what you needed? What did you give up to fit into his world? Who were you before you became a Kong wife? That last one hit different. Zaire sat with it for a whole week. She thought about it while feeding Eli at 2 in the morning. While walking through Riverside Park with the stroller in the gray November cold. While standing in the shower with the water too hot, the way she liked it, letting herself actually think. Who was she before? She was Zaire Amari from Atlanta, Georgia. Daughter of Raymond and Joyce. Jazz club regular. Cornbread enthusiast. The girl who argued with her father about everything just because she could and thought it was fun. The woman who had built a small nonprofit from scratch that helped single mothers access childcare. The woman who had a laugh that filled stadiums. She had walked into her marriage as that woman. And somewhere along the way she had slowly, quietly, packed most of her down and put her in storage. Not because J1 had asked her to. Not in one big dramatic moment. Just gradually. The way you adjust the volume down in a room where someone is always on a call. Until eventually you forget the volume was ever up. "I disappeared," she told Dr. Osei the following Tuesday. "Yes," Dr. Osei said. Simply. "Not dramatically. But I'm still here," Zaire said. "I didn't go anywhere. I just got quiet." "So get loud again," Dr. Osei said. Bloom started as a Notes app document at 3 in the morning. It grew into a Google document. Then a shared folder. Then a pitch deck that Zaire built herself over several nights, Eli asleep in the next room, a cup of chamomile tea going cold beside her laptop. The concept was simple and also not simple at all. A maternal wellness brand built specifically for the postpartum experience. Not the Instagram version of postpartum where women posted their snapback bodies in green smoothies. The real version. The exhausted, identity-shifting, body-changing, emotionally complicated, beautiful and brutal version that nobody wanted to talk about in public. Resources. Community. Products designed by women who had actually been there. He called it Bloom. Not because postpartum was pretty. Because it was a process. Becoming. And becoming things was worth something. She hired Camille Torres in May. Camille was 26 from Miami, Florida. A graphic designer with a ponytail she was always fixing and an energy that matched Zaire's completely. She had gone through her own postpartum experience at 23, she told Zaire during their first meeting at a Soho coffee shop. And it had been the loneliest 6 months of her life. "I didn't even know postpartum depression was a real thing," Camille said. wrapping both hands around her coffee cup. Like I knew it existed but I thought it was just being sad. I didn't know it could feel like disappearing. I know, Heir said quietly. Camille looked at her. You too. Me too. Camille pushed her laptop across the table. On the screen was a logo she had designed the night before. Before the meeting, before she was even officially hired. A single flower mid-bloom. Not fully open. In the process of becoming. Heir stared at it. How did you know, she said. Camille shrugged. Because finished isn't the point. The becoming is. Heir looked up at her. You're hired, she said. And I'm giving you a raise before you've even started. You can't do that, Camille laughed. I'm the founder, Heir said. Watch me. The months that followed were the hardest and the most alive Heir had felt in years. Both things at once. She was up at 5 with Eli. Emails by 6:30. Calls with Camille by 9. Eli's nap was her focused work window. 2 hours, sometimes less, sometimes exactly enough. Evenings were bath time, story time, the specific lullaby Eli wanted which changed every 3 days and had to be figured out through a process of elimination that Heir found both exhausting and hilarious. She was doing all of it alone. Jaewon was present the way a photograph is present. You can see him but he doesn't respond. He came home late. Left early. Dinners were quiet or non-existent. The conversations they did have were logistical. Who was handling Eli's pediatrician appointment? Whether the housekeeper was coming Tuesday or Wednesday. Heir stopped waiting for him to ask how she was. She just moved forward. And Seo Yuna was somewhere in the background of all of it. Heir didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to have answered but she knew. The way you know a storm is coming before the clouds show up. Just something in the air. The comment Priya had relayed, no wonder he's bored, lived in a very specific drawer in Heir's mind. She didn't take it out often. But when she did, it didn't make her cry anymore. It made her build faster. Bloom went live in September. A website. A newsletter. A Brooklyn Clinic partnership that put their resources in front of hundreds of mothers across 3 boroughs. Nothing massive yet. But real. Breathing. Alive. The first email that came in that stopped Heir completely was from a woman in Nashville. I don't even know how to explain it. I love my baby more than anything. But I feel like I disappeared. I found your site at 3 in the morning and I just cried for an hour. Thank you for existing. Heir read it 4 times. Then she walked to the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes straight. Not sad tears. The kind that feel like something being released. She took Eli to Atlanta for his 6-month birthday. Her mother made peach cobbler from scratch. Her father, Raymond, sat in the old wooden chair on the back porch. The one that had been there since Heir was in elementary school, and drank sweet tea and watched his daughter hold his grandson in the evening light. You look different, Joyce said carefully. Different how? Heir asked. Like yourself, her mother said. Like the girl who used to fight her daddy about everything just because she liked to. Heir laughed. Real laugh. The stadium kind. Joyce put a hand over her heart like she had been waiting to hear that sound for a long time. Raymond looked over from his chair. How's J1? He asked. The way a father asks. Carefully. Already knowing the answer isn't simple. We're figuring things out, Heir said. Raymond nodded. Sipped his tea. Didn't push. The porch light was on when she pulled out of the driveway 2 days later. It was always on. By November, Bloom had 4,000 newsletter subscribers, a growing waitlist for their first product line, and 2 partnership inquiries from maternal health organizations. One in Chicago, one in Houston. Jaewon noticed. Not warmly. Not with enthusiasm. More like someone noticing that a piece of furniture has been moved and they keep bumping into it. You've been busy, he said one evening, coming into the kitchen to find Heir on a video call, a whiteboard covered in post-it notes behind her, Eli in his bouncy seat beside her chewing on a plastic giraffe. I have, Heir said. And kept going. He stood there for a moment. Waiting for her to pause for him. Explain herself. Invite him in. He didn't. He went back to his office. And the apartment, which had always felt too big and too quiet, now felt different for a different reason. Because Heir was in it. Fully. Loudly. And that changed everything. We are right in the middle of Heir's story and honestly we need to know. Are you team leave and never look back, or team give him one more chance? Drop it in the comments and subscribe if you haven't already. New stories every single week and you do not want to miss chapter 3. Seoul in April is the kind of beautiful that feels almost unfair. Cherry blossoms along the Han River. Street food on every corner. The city moving fast but alive in a way that New York, for all its noise, sometimes forgot how to be. Heir stepped off the plane at Incheon International with Eli on her hip and Camille beside her, managing both their carry-ons and a tote bag full of presentation materials. "You know he's going to be there," Camille said as they walked through arrivals. "I know," Heir said. "At the gala. His company's gala. Where you will walk in looking like that." "Camille. I'm just saying." "I know," Heir said. "Come." Unbothered. Moving forward. Camille adjusted the tote bag on her shoulder and said nothing else. But she was smiling. The summit was held in a sleek conference center in Yongsan, and Heir was the second featured speaker on day 1. She stood on that stage in front of 400 people. Investors, healthcare professionals, journalists, brand partners from 12 different countries, and she talked. No teleprompter. No heavy notes. Just Heir Amari from Atlanta, Georgia, speaking about the things she had built from pain and post-it notes and 2-hour work windows during her baby's nap. She talked about the gap in maternal mental health support. About the women who fell through it. About what Bloom was doing and why it mattered and where it was going. 45 minutes. The room stood at the end. A woman in the front row, silver-haired, probably late 60s, blazer that cost more than most cars, clearly someone who had seen things and was not easily impressed, was applauding above her head with zero self-consciousness. Her name was Eleanor Park, one of the most powerful maternal health investors in Asia. She had built 3 global healthcare funds from the ground up and had a reputation for funding only things she genuinely believed in. She found Heir before Heir even made it off the stage. "That," Eleanor said, holding out her hand, "was the most honest presentation I have heard in 15 years of attending these events." Heir shook her hand. "Thank you," she said. "I meant every word." Eleanor looked at her for a moment with the sharp, assessing look of someone who has learned to read people very fast. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm still standing here." The gala was 2 nights later. The Kang Group's main event venue in Gangnam. A glass and steel tower that looked over the Seoul skyline in a way that was stunning and absolutely designed to be stunning. The flowers were architectural. The lighting was golden. The guest list was the kind that made people check their invitations twice. Heir's gown was amber. Deep, rich, warm amber. Long and structured and elegant in the way that didn't announce itself, it just arrived. She had found it in a boutique in Myeongdong with Camille, and when she came out of the fitting room in it, Camille had gone completely silent for a full 3 seconds. "Heir," Camille said. "Too much. I will physically fight you if you don't buy that dress," Camille said. He bought the dress. Her hair was down, big, full, natural curls that her mother had always called her crown. Her grandmother's pearl earrings. Small. The kind of thing that grounds you when the room gets loud. She arrived at the gala at 8:15. She walked through the main entrance alone. And the room, that elegant, expensive, carefully curated room full of people who had seen everything and were impressed by very little, did something that rooms do when someone walks in who is completely sure of themselves. It noticed. Not loudly. Just that quiet ripple. Heads turning. Conversations pausing half a breath. A recalibration. Eleanor Park found her within minutes, wine in hand, and steered her toward a group of investors and a Korean-American tech philanthropist named James Wu who had been trying to get a meeting with Eleanor for 3 months and found himself instead having a conversation with Heir that he later described to his assistant as the most interesting 20 minutes he'd had all year. Heir laughed. The full laugh. The stadium laugh. It rang out across the room like it owned the place. Because it did. Jaewon was standing near the bar with 2 board members when he heard it. That laugh. He turned before he could stop himself. The way you turn when something pulls your attention completely against your will. And there she was. His wife. He stood very still. He had seen Heir a handful of times over the past several months. Logistics, Eli exchanges, the occasional overlap in the apartment. He had watched her get busy. Get focused. Watched the post-it notes multiply on the walls of the home office she had claimed. He had noticed. But this was different. She was standing in the middle of the room in that amber gown, laughing at something Eleanor Park had said, and she looked. He searched for the right word and couldn't find one adequate enough. Not just beautiful. Not just elegant. She looked like a woman who had gone somewhere very dark and very hard and had come out the other side carrying everything she'd learned. She looked free. Eleanor Park had her hand on Zair's arm like they were old friends. James Wu was leaning slightly toward her the way people lean toward someone they don't want to stop listening to. Two other guests had drifted into the orbit of their conversation in the way people drift toward warmth. Jaewon's colleague said something beside him. He didn't hear a single word of it. Because across that room, Zair turned slightly, not looking for him, not performing for him, not even aware of him in that moment, and she was laughing and her crown was full and her pearls caught the light and she was the most magnetic person in that room. That room. His company's room. Full of people he had invited. And every single one of them was looking at her. Something landed in Jaewon's chest that was heavy and specific and impossible to ignore. He had called her fat. He had looked at her across a dinner table. This woman right there, and told her other women bounce back faster. He had been on his phone while she grew his son. He had been cold while she healed alone. He had been elsewhere while she became this. The colleague beside him said something again. "Excuse me," Jaewon said quietly. He set his glass down. And he just stood there. Because there was nowhere to go that made sense. He couldn't walk over to her and say what? He couldn't stand at the bar and pretend the weight in his chest wasn't there. His mother appeared beside him. Mrs. Kong. Elegant. A woman who said enormous things in very few words. She stood beside him and looked at Zair across the room. "She presented at the summit yesterday," she said. "I know," Jaewon said. "I watched the recording." Pause. "Did you?" He hadn't. He had been in a board meeting. Mrs. Kong turned to look at her son directly. "You were careless with her," she said. That was all. She walked away to join Eleanor Park's circle. And Jaewon stood there with those 6 words sitting on him like a building. He found Zair near the window later. Just for a moment she was standing alone, looking at the Seoul skyline, a glass of sparkling water in her hand. "Zair," he said. She turned. Looked at him with an expression that was not cold and not warm. It was clear. The expression of someone who has already sorted through every feeling and filed them honestly. "Hey," she said. "You were..." He stopped. Started over. "The summit. I heard it went well." "It went great," she said, stating a fact. He looked at her. There were so many things piling up behind his teeth. None of them felt big enough. "How's Eli?" he asked finally. "He took his first steps Tuesday," she said. And the smile that came with that was the purest thing in the room. His jaw tightened. "I missed it." "You did," she said. Simply. "No cruelty in it. Can I see the video?" She looked at him for just a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and showed him. They stood side by side at the window and watched their son take 3 wobbly, triumphant steps across Camille's apartment floor, sit down hard on his diaper and look thrilled with himself. Jaewon watched it twice. "He looks like both of us," he said quietly. Zair put her phone back in her purse. "Good night, Jaewon," she said. Warm. Final. Complete. And she walked back to Eleanor Park and James Wu and the conversation that was about to change everything. He watched her go. And for the first time in a very long time, Kang Jaewon felt the full weight of every single thing he had thrown away. Okay, we need the comments right now. Did you see that entrance coming? Because wow. Subscribe if you haven't already and tell us where you're watching from. Chapter 4 is where everything lands and you cannot miss it. The announcement came 6 weeks after Seoul. Eleanor Park's firm, one of the most respected maternal health investment funds in the world, was officially partnering with Bloom for global expansion. The press release included a quote from Eleanor calling Bloom the most authentic maternal wellness brand to emerge in the last decade. The New York Times picked it up, then CNN, then 12 international outlets. Zair's photo, the one Camille had taken at the summit mid-laugh, completely unaware of the camera, ran alongside every single story. Her inbox crashed. Camille sent her a single text, "I'm going to need a raise." An actual one this time. Zair replied, "Already done." The scandal broke on a Tuesday morning in June. A financial journalist in Seoul had been quietly investigating the Kong Group's North American real estate division for months. What he published was not a small story. Allegations of misreported financial data across 2 major development projects. The kind of story that caused stock prices to drop in real time and made board members suddenly very hard to reach. By noon, 3 separate news networks had picked it up. By 3 p.m. the Kong Group's PR team was in full emergency mode. By 6 p.m. Jaewon's mother called Heir directly. Heir was in the middle of Eli's dinner, sweet potato puree which Eli tolerated with the expression of a very disappointed Seo, when her phone rang. She looked at the name. She answered. "Mrs. Kong," she said. "Heir." "Boss. I'll be direct." "Please," Heir said. "The story is damaging. Significantly. Our legal team is managing the investigation internally, but the public trust issue is..." Another pause, and beneath the composure something that was actually human. "It is serious. We need credibility that the family name cannot currently provide." Heir moved Eli's sweet potato slightly further from his reach. "You're asking me to be the bridge," she said. "Yes," Mrs. Kong said. Heir was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Eli, who had found his spoon and was using it to conduct an imaginary orchestra. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said. She called Dr. Osei first. "They need me," she said, standing at the window of her apartment looking out at the Hudson. "I know," Dr. Osei said. "How do you feel about that?" "Complicated," Heir said honestly. "Part of me wants to say no. To let them figure it out without me because I don't owe them anything." She exhaled. "But another part of me knows that I actually have the power here. For real. Not because I performed my way back into their good graces. Because I built something. Because Eleanor Park chose me. Because I did the work." "So what's the question?" Dr. Osei asked. "The question is whether I do this for me, because it could genuinely grow Bloom globally and put me in rooms that would take years to get into otherwise. Or whether I do it because I'm still somewhere inside trying to prove something to people who hurt me." Silence. "Those are very different reasons," Dr. Osei said. "I know," Heir said. "I need to be sure which one it is." He sat with it overnight. By morning she knew. He said yes. Her terms. Her lawyer. Her document. She would serve as an independent public partner, not as Jaewon's wife, not as a Kong family representative, but as Heir Amari, founder of Bloom, a separate entity with her own reputation and her own integrity. Bloom would not absorb any of the family's controversy. Any public collaboration would be dissolved immediately if anything in the investigation compromised her brand's mission. The Kong family's legal team reviewed the terms. They accepted everything. Jaewon signed last. She heard he sat with the document for a long time before he picked up the pen. She didn't ask about it. She just moved forward. The press tour was 3 weeks. New York. Los Angeles. Heir did 17 interviews. 2 morning shows. 1 primetime broadcast. She spoke carefully and honestly about accountability, about rebuilding trust, about what transparency actually required from people in power. He was good at it. Not because she was polished. Because she was real. Because she looked at cameras the way she looked at people. Directly, warmly, without pretense. The public responded. The stock stabilized. The Kong Group's internal investigation continued, but the bleeding stopped. And Bloom, because of the visibility, because of Eleanor, because of every interview and every room Heir now walked into with full authority, grew faster in those 3 weeks than in the entire previous year. The last night of the press tour was in Los Angeles, Santa Monica. A hotel room with an ocean view that Heir had specifically requested because she had always wanted to fall asleep to the sound of the Pacific, and this felt like the right time. She was on the balcony when she heard the knock. He knew. She let him in. Left the balcony door open. Jaewon stood inside the room looking at the ocean view like he was letting himself actually see something for the first time in a long while. "Can I sit?" he asked. She gestured to the chair near the window. He sat. She stayed standing, leaning against the balcony doorframe. Grounded. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for months," he started, hesitating. "And I keep realizing the problem is that I keep looking for the right words. Like I'm preparing a presentation." He stopped. "I don't want to present to you. I want to just say it." She waited. "What I said to you," he said quietly. "All the things I said. About your body. About other women. About..." He looked at his hands. "You had just given me the most important thing in my life. And I looked at you like a problem. I was careless and I was wrong and I have thought about it almost every single day since Seoul. He looked up. Not because of the gala. Not because of how the room looked at you. Because of the video of Eli walking. Because I missed it. Because I have been missing things for a long time and I told myself it was work and it was the business and it was everything else and it was never me. Pause. But it was me. Heir looked at him for a long time. The ocean was steady outside. Unhurried. I believe you, she said finally. He looked up. But Jaewon, she said, meaning it and it being enough are two different things. I spent a long time making myself smaller in this marriage. Saying okay when I should have said this is not okay. Adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. She shook her head slowly. I'm not built that way anymore. I cannot go back to being the woman who kept eating her salmon. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to. And Yuna, she said. He closed his eyes briefly. It's over, he said. It's been over. I know, she said. Your mother told me. But honestly that wasn't even the deepest wound. The deepest wound was the dinner table. The phone. The comparison to other women. Being invisible in my own home while I was healing and building and doing everything alone. She looked at him steadily. That's what I need you to understand. Not just the other woman. All of it. He nodded slowly. Receiving it. I'm in therapy, he said. Have been for 4 months. My own. Not because anyone asked me to. She hadn't known that. She let it land. I'm not closing a door, she said carefully. But I'm not opening one tonight either. Not on a balcony in Santa Monica because it's pretty and emotional and we're both tired. She almost smiled. Whatever we might look like in the future, if that exists, it looks completely different from before. Different how, he said. Equal, she said. Just equal. So, that's everything. He was quiet. Yeah, he said finally. Stiffly. Okay. She didn't make any decisions that night. For that month. But things shifted. Slowly. Deliberately. The way things shift when two people are actually paying attention this time. Jaewon called every morning to talk to Eli. Real calls. Silly calls. He learned every single one of Eli's current obsessions. The cartoon episode he wanted on loop. The exact way he wanted his toast. The stuffed elephant named Boo who was non-negotiable for every nap. He flew to New York on a Saturday and spent the whole day at Central Park. Stroller. Ducks. Ice cream from the cart near the Bethesda fountain. Heir watched from a bench 20 feet away and felt something complicated and warm and completely unresolved all at once. He let it be complicated. Dr. Osei had taught her that complicated wasn't the same as broken. In December, Bloom launched its first full product line. Wellness tools designed for postpartum recovery. A portion of every purchase going directly to fund mental health resources for mothers in under-resourced communities. It sold out in 72 hours. Heir sat in Camille's Brooklyn apartment surrounded by empty glasses and post-it notes and the beautiful chaos of a team that had just done something real, and she thought about the woman on the Nashville forum. He found the screenshot. She had saved it months ago. She wrote back. I felt that way too. I'm Heir. I built something because of you and about 1,000 women like you. I hope it helps. Thank you for writing it. The woman responded in 20 minutes. I can't stop crying. Thank you for seeing us. Heir put her phone face down. Eli, 14 months old and fully committed to walking into furniture, toddled over and grabbed her knee. He picked him up. He patted her face with both hands, enthusiastically, no concept of personal space, and said his current word for happy. Hap. Just hap. With enormous conviction. Yeah baby, Heir said, holding him tight. Hap. Christmas Eve, Jaewon showed up at her door. A ridiculously large stuffed elephant under one arm. 2 cups of hot chocolate from the cafe on the corner she had mentioned once months ago in passing. She opened the door. Looked at him standing there in the cold, holding both things, looking maybe the most human she had seen him look in years. You remembered the hot chocolate, she said. You mentioned it in September, he said, slightly nervous. I wrote it down. She stepped back from the door. Come in, she said. It's freezing. They sat on the couch. Eli destroyed the wrapping paper off the elephant with unhinged holiday energy. The city went quiet outside. The old radiator in the corner knocked and hissed. At some point Jaewon said softly, I'm not going to stop trying. Zaire looked at him. I know, she said. I know you don't need me to, he said. That's not what I mean. I want to. Because you deserve someone who shows up. Not because you need my approval anymore. Just because it's true. She was quiet for a moment. Eli sat on top of the elephant. Looked at both of them. Hap, he announced. They both laughed. Same room. Same sound. Same moment. And something, not fixed, not perfect, not the same as before, began to quietly, carefully find its way back. The next morning Zaire stood at her bathroom mirror. Early. Before anyone else was awake. The post-it note was still there. Bottom corner. Slightly worn, edges curling after more than a year. What I deserve. She looked at herself. Her real self. The woman who built something from the dark. Who sat in a rocking chair at 3 a.m. and made a quiet promise she didn't understand yet. Who walked into a gala in Seoul and let the room recalibrate. Who wrote her own terms and watched a powerful family sign every single one. She reached up. And she took the post-it note off the mirror. Not because she was done knowing it. Because she didn't need the reminder anymore. She knew it. In her body. In her bones. She folded it carefully. Placed it in the top drawer of her dresser, where she kept her grandmother's letters, Eli's first hospital bracelet, the ticket stub from the Nashville rooftop where she said yes. Because the story wasn't over. But Zaire Amari was no longer the woman who said okay and kept eating salmon. She was standing at her own mirror. In her own life. Holding her own terms. And the question she carried now wasn't about him. It wasn't about the gala or the scandal or the hot chocolate on Christmas Eve. It was simpler than all of that. Should she forgive him, truly, fully, with the kind of forgiveness that opens a door back to something? Or should she take everything she had built and walk forward into a life that was entirely, completely, unapologetically hers? She looked at herself in the mirror for a long moment. Then she smiled. And went to make her son breakfast. "Hey, we need to hear from you. Should Zaire forgive him and give their marriage a real second chance? Or should she close that chapter and walk forward alone? Drop your answer in the comments right now because this community has opinions and we want every single one. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that button, tell us where you're watching from, and we will see you in the next story.